Imagine this. You're standing at the edge of a vast forest. Behind you is everything you've ever known. Your routines, your goals, your identity stitched together by habits and hopes. In front of you lies an unmarked path swallowed by mist. Its silence deafening. You feel it in your chest, a quiet pressure like something within you has stagnated, not broken, not shattered, just still. Like a river that has stopped mid-flow, its waters still glimmering under the sun, but motionless. Everyone around you tells you that you're doing well. You nod, smile, post. But when the noise quiets and the lights dim, you ask yourself, why do I feel like I'm not moving? You've read the books, you've set the goals, you've repeated the affirmations, posted the quotes, tracked the habits, and still somehow you are here. Not broken, but unbent. Not lost, but unmoved. It's as if some invisible ceiling has descended upon you, subtle and suffocating. You're stretching, reaching, growing, but only within the constraints of a box that you didn't even realize you were in. And the most unsettling part? You don't remember building it. How can someone who is constantly striving still feel so trapped? How can growth feel so much like stagnation, despite your best efforts? What if the reason you're not growing has nothing to do with discipline, laziness, or lack of ambition, but everything to do with something far more insidious? Something inside you that has disguised itself as progress, but is actually a prison. Think about it. Your days are filled with productivity, yet the nights feel hollow. You meet your goals, but they feel strangely weightless once achieved. You chase growth, but it feels more like motion sickness than transcendence. Every step forward seems rehearsed, mapped out, and strangely safe. When did growth become something so predictable? Maybe the real question isn't why you aren't growing. Maybe it's what definition of growth you've unknowingly accepted as truth. Pause here. Breathe. Consider this. What if everything you call growth, career advancement, polished confidence, curated self-improvement, wasn't growth at all? What if it was simply expansion within limitation? A kind of mental suburbia where you're given just enough space to feel free, but not enough to discover who you really are beyond the framework society gave you? Could it be that the life you've built was never yours to begin with? You see, the most dangerous cages are the ones we decorate. We hang diplomas on the bars. We install apps that reward us for progress. We surround ourselves with people who applaud our adherence to the path. And then we wonder why it feels like we're suffocating in a room full of air. You've been conditioned to seek metrics, milestones, and meaning from things that were designed to keep you on a leash, just long enough to feel free, but never quite unchained. Every app, every like, every paycheck, every productivity hack is a form of currency in a system you never asked to be part of. And the system thrives on one thing: your discontent. Because discontent keeps you consuming, it keeps you chasing, it keeps you growing, but never waking up. Ask yourself this: who benefits from your growth if it's always in service of the same machine? What kind of growth never challenges the system that defines it? The uncomfortable truth is, you're not growing because you're not meant to grow in the way you truly need to. Not in a society that fears true autonomy. Not in a culture that sells comfort dressed as progress. Not in a world that rewards conformity and calls it evolution. Now look again at that forest, the one cloaked in mist, the one you've avoided. Why? Because no one's paved the way, because it doesn't promise clarity, because it doesn't offer validation, because it whispers, you will not be the same if you step into this. And that's what terrifies you, because maybe growth isn't becoming more of what you already are. Maybe real growth, soul-shattering, liberating, irrevocable growth, is about becoming something you have never been allowed to be. And to do that, you'll have to confront something buried deep within you. A hidden force, a psychological parasite, a philosophical mirage, something that's been quietly, masterfully holding you back. And once you see it, truly see it, nothing will ever look the same again. Let's go deeper. You don't remember the moment it first took hold because it didn't arrive like a thunderclap. It came quietly, disguised as love, safety, guidance. It came through lullabies, textbooks, praise, correction. It arrived in the subtle glances of disapproval when you strayed too far from the script, in the silence after you asked the wrong question, in the applause when you conformed. This hidden force doesn't need chains. It thrives on agreement. It lives in the voice inside your head that says, "Be realistic." It's in the hesitation before you speak your truth, in the way you soften your edges to be palatable, in the way you measure your worth against achievements you didn't truly choose. It is the internalized architecture of expectation. Carl Jung called it the persona, the mask you wear to function in society, a necessary construct to operate within the world. But he also warned, when you over-identify with the mask, you forget that you are not the mask. You become a character in someone else's play, applauded for your performance, while the real you quietly fades backstage. It's more than fear of judgment. It's deeper. It's the unconscious belief that your value depends on being digestible. It's the child inside you who learned that safety is found in being agreeable, obedient, pleasing. It's not your fault. It's how you survived. But survival is not the same as growth, and most of what you call growth is merely the optimization of that mask. Friedrich Nietzsche saw it too. He warned of the herd morality, a kind of moral consensus designed not to elevate individuals, but to maintain social order. To step outside, it is to risk being devoured. Better then to dull your inner fire, to stay close to the herd and call it maturity. The world teaches you to master yourself, not for liberation, but for compliance. You are trained to regulate your emotions, to delay gratification, to follow the plan. And these things do offer benefits. But here's the trap. They can also be used to keep you asleep while believing you're awake. Arthur Schopenhauer once said, "A man can do what he wants, but not want what he wants." Let that settle. What if your desires, the very fuel for your supposed growth, have been hijacked? What if what you want has been shaped not by your soul, but by algorithms, norms, and wounds you haven't dared to name? This is the tragedy. You are chasing a version of growth that was scripted by forces that never had your freedom in mind. You are racing toward a self you didn't fully choose. Jean-Paul Sartre would say that you are living in bad faith, lying to yourself about your freedom, conforming to roles because the weight of true freedom, radical responsibility, is unbearable. You keep telling yourself, if I just work harder, if I just master this new system, if I just fix this part of me. But growth is not always about addition. Sometimes it's about subtraction. It's about unlearning the lies. It's about disobeying the story. Ask yourself, when did you start believing that growth must be hard, that it must come with suffering, sacrifice, self-erasure? When did discomfort become the only evidence of progress? Look closely. That belief didn't come from your soul. It came from a culture that equates burnout with virtue, a system that needs you to keep going, even if you're going nowhere meaningful, a society that praises grind but fears awakening. Viktor Frankl, who survived the unthinkable, said that man's deepest need is not pleasure, not even happiness, but meaning. But meaning cannot be given to you. It must be forged. And you cannot forge it while living someone else's script. So what is the hidden problem? It's not that you're lazy. It's not that you're undisciplined. It's not that you lack clarity. It's that you've been colonized, psychologically, emotionally, existentially, by forces that profit from your unconsciousness. Your identity is not a static truth. It's a story constantly being rewritten, and you've let others hold the pen. You wonder why you feel resistance when trying to level up. Maybe it's not self-sabotage. Maybe it's your deeper self saying, I don't want to grow in this direction. I want to break out. What you call procrastination might be protest, What you call burnout might be betrayal of your true self. What you call failure might be your soul refusing to cooperate with a destiny you never truly chose. Growth isn't what you think it is, and until you challenge the roots of that definition, you will continue to strive and stall, push and sink, achieve and feel nothing. Because the growth you're chasing is not expansion of the soul. It is the reinforcement of the cage. Now the tension begins to twist a little tighter, doesn't it? Because if this is true, then every goal you've set, every milestone you've celebrated, every breakthrough you believed in, may have been part of the illusion. And yet somewhere deep in the quiet ruins of your being, there is a voice, barely audible but unwavering, whispering, "There's more. There's something else. Wake up." But to wake up, you must see what's been hidden in plain sight. You must see not only how the problem began, but how it continues to shape you even now. Because the consequences aren't just internal, they are everywhere. Let's look at the unseen wreckage. You wake up, you dress, you show up, you check your phone, sip your coffee, you scroll, nod, smile, performance, and it all feels functional. Until one night, without warning, the weight comes. Not dramatic, not catastrophic, just a quiet, creeping gravity. Like a fog moving in at dusk. It doesn't hurt, but it also doesn't leave. That's the first consequence. Not agony, not chaos, but numbness. A subtle erosion of aliveness. You tell yourself you're tired, you blame it on stress, but deep down, you feel it. The slow death of something sacred inside you. This isn't burnout from overwork. It's spiritual claustrophobia. You were born with wildness in your bones, a hunger not just for survival, but for immensity. But the world taught you to downsize, to settle for digestible goals and tidy dreams. It convinced you that keeping pace was the same as living fully. Now you mistake the flickering of the screen for light. You confuse endless notifications for connection. You mistake progress bars for purpose. And all the while, your soul waits patiently, untouched. This is the second consequence. Alienation from your own essence. Cognitive science calls it learned helplessness. Neurology shows how neural pathways thicken in the direction of repeated thought. If you've been trained to equate value with validation, then over time your brain literally rewires to depend on approval for identity. You outsource your worth. You rent your self-esteem from metrics you didn't choose. Your dopamine system fires not from inner alignment, but from digital affirmation. Your nervous system adapts to a rhythm of reaction, not creation. And the worst part, you adapt so well you forget there's any other way. You've been domesticated, and like the zoo animal who forgets the sound of the wild, you begin to think this cage is home. Jean Baudrillard warned of simulacra, a world of signs that refer only to other signs, never to reality itself. In other words, a life of symbols that simulate meaning but are utterly hollow. You've seen it. People obsessed with impact, who feel numb inside. People who hit six figures but have no idea what they're here for. People who brand their trauma and sell their healing but still wake up in existential dread. Third consequence, false selves reinforcing false systems. When you can no longer distinguish between achievement and awakening, success becomes spiritual sedation. The deeper tragedy, you begin to police your own boundaries. You internalize the mechanisms of control so completely that there's no need for anyone to stop you. You stop yourself. This is what philosopher Michel Foucault meant when he spoke of the panopticon, a prison where you never know when you're being watched, so you always behave. Except now, the warden is within. You self-censor your longings. You sterilize your rebellion. You quiet your curiosity. And yet, your body remembers. It keeps the score. You feel it in the tension in your jaw when you suppress truth, in the migraines when you betray your intuition, in the insomnia that no supplement can fix, because it's not a chemical imbalance, it's a soul imbalance. This dissonance, unaddressed, metastasizes into chronic indecision, into relationships that feel like performance, into dreams that feel like obligations, into a life that looks right but feels wrong. Fourth consequence, existential fatigue, not just tiredness of the body, but weariness of the spirit. A depletion that rest cannot fix because it's not caused by exertion, it's caused by disconnection. Your ancestors moved through the world with myth, with ritual, with story. They bled meaning into the mundane. But now, in the age of the hyper-rational, you are expected to live without poetry, to suppress wonder in favor of data, to replace awe with analysis. You're told to optimize every hour, but never to question what you're optimizing for. And so, a fifth consequence emerges, the illusion of freedom. You feel autonomous, you feel informed, you feel empowered. But choice without consciousness is not freedom, it is illusion. You scroll past 100 versions of self-growth advice every day, but it's not growth, it's content. It's not transformation, it's aesthetic. You've been sold a revolution that keeps you right where you are. Rebranded chains, personalized prisons, empowerment marketed by the very systems that depend on your disempowerment. You're given just enough progress to stay compliant, just enough insight to keep consuming, just enough crisis to keep chasing the next fix. You don't even realize it, but your suffering has become a market. Your growth has become an algorithm. Your longing has been packaged, priced, and sold back to you as a program. And here's the paradox. The more you seek wholeness through these channels, the more fractured you become. Because the deeper self, the untamed, radiant, chaotic self, cannot be found in systems designed to suppress it. So you begin to ask dangerous questions. You feel the pressure building, not in your schedule, but in your spirit. Something in you refuses to be tamed any longer. Something in you is clawing at the edges of your curated life. Something in you is ready to set fire to the script. But what does it mean to truly rebel against this invisible order? What does it take to break free from a system that lives not just around you, but within you? That moment is coming, and it won't be comfortable because the path to freedom never is. Now, it's time for the rebellion. It doesn't begin with a roar. It begins with silence, a silence so still it feels like death. But it is not death. It is gestation, the crumbling of an identity that was never truly yours. You sit in the quiet, and something ancient stirs, something unpolished, something that doesn't care about metrics or milestones. It doesn't want to improve. It wants to emerge. And in that moment, the rebellion begins, not by running faster, not by trying harder, but by stopping utterly and completely, by daring to ask the forbidden question, what if I walked away from everything that isn't mine? This is where most people flinch, because freedom isn't granted, it's claimed. And to claim it, you must be willing to burn. You have to be willing to watch the version of you that made everyone comfortable die. The achiever, the caretaker, the perfectionist, the peacemaker, the hustler, the brand, the good son, the golden daughter, the strong one, the smart one, the one who always knows what to say. Let them go. Mourn them if you must, but do not resurrect them. They were not you. They were roles, costumes sewn from fear and survival. Now you must strip them off and stand naked in the fire of your own becoming. This is the rebellion. It's not about shouting at the system. It's about no longer feeding it with your silence. It's about refusing to be a passive participant in your own life. About reclaiming the sovereignty of your desire. Desire, not the sanitized kind, not the kind approved by your coach, your feed, your industry, but the wild, unruly kind. The kind that makes no sense but won't leave you alone. The kind that smells like smoke and thunder. The kind you buried because it didn't fit into 5 steps to success. To rebel, you must listen to that desire again, and that takes courage. Because to listen is to risk everything, your status, your image, your belonging, but it is also to reclaim your power. Remember, the system doesn't fear your failure. It fears your awakening. It fears what happens when you stop playing along, when you stop performing, stop pretending, stop optimizing yourself like a product, stop narrating your life for an audience that's not even watching. True rebellion is inner insubordination. It's when you stop trying to be good and start being real. It's when you no longer seek healing so you can be more productive, but so you can finally be whole. It's when you realize growth isn't about fixing yourself, but remembering who you were before the world told you who to be. Look at those who broke free. Nietzsche walked away from academia, knowing it would cost him everything, because truth mattered more than applause. Sartre rejected the Nobel Prize because freedom cannot be commodified. Huxley warned us through fiction, showing how comfort becomes control. Frankl found meaning in the ashes of a concentration camp because he understood. They can strip your freedom of movement, but never your freedom of meaning. You too must choose, not once, but daily, to dismantle the internal hierarchy that tells you, be useful, be nice, be palatable. Instead, ask, is this real for me? Does this expand my soul? Would I do this if no one clapped? Now, the counterintuitive part. Breaking free is not about running from systems. It's about seeing through them, dismantling them from the inside out. You stop needing permission. You stop seeking consensus. You begin acting from essence, not ego. You learn to disappoint people without guilt. You let go of chronically explaining yourself. You drop the compulsion to prove. You allow mess, contradiction, complexity, because truth is not clean. It is raw. It is wild. It is alive. And as you let this truth move through you, the world begins to change. Not because the world has changed, but because you are no longer bound by its illusion. This is the moment your nervous system begins to rewire, not for performance, but presence, not for alertness, but aliveness. Your actions stop being extracted from fear and begin to flow from integrity. You no longer chase significance, you embody it. You no longer seek belonging, you become a place where belonging is possible. You begin creating, not to impress, but to express. You begin relating, not to control, but to connect. You begin moving, not to escape, but to embody. And suddenly growth is no longer linear. It is spiral, it is cellular, it is sacred. You're not building a brand, you're becoming a force. This rebellion will not be seen on the surface at first, but it will be felt in your energy, in your clarity, in your refusal to betray your soul one more day. So let the fire rise, let the old stories burn, let the silence become your teacher, let desire lead the way, and know this, you are not alone. Others are waking up too. One by one, they are stepping off the stage. shedding the scripts, leaving the algorithm behind. There is a different way to live, not just faster, not just more mindful, but truer, freer, wilder. You've tasted the lie, now you're ready for the truth. And that truth is the final door, the one you've been circling your whole life without knowing it. And what waits beyond it will shatter everything you thought you knew. Shall we open it? You've walked through the smoke. You've let it all fall, the masks, the mirrors, the manicured illusions. And now here you are, no longer asking, how do I grow? But asking, what have I been growing toward? And beneath that, a deeper, more terrifying question. Was the self I was trying to become even real? This is the moment the curtain lifts, the moment you realize the truth you were never meant to find. Because if you found it, you'd no longer be controllable. Here it is. The reason you weren't growing isn't because you were weak. It's because you were growing in the wrong direction. You were climbing a ladder leaned against a wall you didn't build. You were evolving into a version of yourself designed to survive a system that was never meant to nurture your soul. And all that time, the real you, the wild, knowing, incandescent you, was buried beneath layers of should, starving beneath a costume of control. Growth isn't what they told you. It's not about accumulation. It's not about healing every wound until you're palatable. It's not about endlessly refining the avatar you perform for the world. True growth is a return, not forward, but inward, not higher, but deeper, like the oak tree that grows not by racing towards the sky, but by plunging into darkness, into soil, into the invisible. You've been taught that growth is self-improvement. It's not, it's self-remembrance. You are not something broken to be fixed. You are something sacred to be uncovered. You were never too much. You were never behind. You were simply disconnected from the truth that was always there. Beneath the noise, beneath the hustle, beneath the algorithms of identity. Carl Jung knew this. He said, "Until you make the unconscious conscious, it will direct your life, and you will call it fate." You've spent your life chasing outcomes, but growth begins the moment you turn inward and say, "Show me what I've refused to feel." That's the true revolution, not changing your life, but facing it. No more hiding behind potential. No more using personal development as a distraction from personal truth. No more spiritual bypassing. No more next level when you haven't made peace with the foundation. You stop trying to fix your mindset and start asking, what truth am I afraid to live? You stop trying to manifest a better reality and begin to see you are reality, and you've been outsourcing your power to systems built on your amnesia. Do you feel it? That subtle quake in your bones? It's not fear, it's remembering, because deep down you've always known. The path was never linear. The goal was never external. The destination was never a title, a metric, or a moment. It was you, fully you, untamed, unfiltered, unapologetic. Imagine this. You walk into a room and no longer ask, who do I need to be? You ask, what truth wants to be spoken through me today? You stop networking and start connecting. You stop producing and start expressing. You stop climbing and start rooting. This is what it means to be free, to no longer measure yourself with someone else's ruler, to no longer contort your soul to fit within a cultural costume. You don't need another strategy. You need to trust your depth. You don't need to get better. You need to get real. Arthur Schopenhauer once wrote, "Talent hits a target no one else can hit. Genius hits a target no one else can see. But your genius isn't what you do. It's what you are when you stop trying to be what you're not. That's the truth. You were not meant to grow within the container of this culture. You were meant to outgrow it, to shed it like dead skin, to rise from it like fire from ash. The real reason you weren't growing, because part of you already knew, to grow in the way they demanded would cost you your soul. And so you resisted, you delayed, you self-sabotaged, you numbed, not because you were lazy, but because something sacred in you was refusing to comply. Do you see now? It wasn't failure, it was wisdom. It was your soul saying, not this, not here, not like this. So what now? Now you stop chasing and start listening. You honor what's been aching to emerge from within you all along. You stop growing to prove. You start growing to remember. Not the version of you that's been validated by algorithms and applause, but the version that was born knowing, born burning, born wild. And when you meet that version again, when you finally see yourself not as a project but as a presence, everything changes. You don't just grow, you become. And that is a truth no system can touch, no platform can define, no trend can contain. So take a breath, stand up, and look around. Not for the next step, but for the next moment to live fully as yourself. Because that is the only growth that matters. That is the only success worth chasing. And that is the only revolution that will last. Let them keep their empires of performance. You're building something different, something unshakable, something real. You. The real reason you weren't growing was because you hadn't yet remembered that you already are.